Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's Harmony Insights lunch date. My name is Erich Kurschat. I'm the owner of Harmony Insights LLC, a company that allows me to work with organizations and consultants using the DISC personality assessment. I'm also the founder of the HR Hot Seat Inclusive Mastermind community, a community of, as we say, real HR pros solving real HR problems. You can find out more about HR Hot Seat. We are entirely free, entirely virtual these days, all at, as you can imagine, hrhotseat.com. We got really creative with that. Today's lunch date is really special, as they all have been. And I started this a few months ago really to stay connected with people who inspire me, people that I want to get to know better. Many of you have perhaps been guests of mine, and those of you who haven't are familiar faces. So I really appreciate those of you who keep showing up for these, because they're a lot of fun, very inspiring. And that's what they're meant to be. At a time when we are, a lot of us, working from home more often than we had before, looking for inspiration in our day to do our best work, that's where this comes in. It's 30 minutes. It's not nearly long enough for most of the topics that we have, but it's meant to get you on your way and keep you inspired and encouraged with everything else that's going on in the world. I am thrilled to welcome our special guest for today, Dr. Melanie Peacock. Melanie, thank you for joining us. How the heck are you?
I am awesome sauce, and I am so excited to be here. Thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your day to join us. And I don't think I have the words to describe how it warms my heart to look at the screen and see so many familiar faces, some new faces to me. Just means a lot to me, guys. You're just wonderful.
That's great. And as you have been so kind to share about our conversation today, Melanie, people in our respective circles have been chiming in and saying how excited they've been. I know Mary, who's with us today, is just such a supporter of these lunch dates, and she helped spread the word. And that's just, it really is inspiring, certainly, but it warms the heart a little bit, right? To know that you're supported in that way and that people are going to show up and participate.
Absolutely.
I want to ask you, first and foremost, what I ask all of my guests, or most of them actually, is people may know that I choose my guests for these conversations, people I want to talk with, and they choose our topics. And you chose a topic that we have titled Blended, the Strategic Application of Work from Home Lessons Learned, something that's very topical today. Why is this something that happens to be a passion of yours?
So, Eric, my doctoral research was about blended delivery in post-secondary environments. So, as a passionate educator and someone who's always trying to challenge myself, I wasn't really comfortable with technology. Are we ever, really? Let's be honest. So, I decided to, again, think outside the box. This was many years ago. And so I started offering to my students courses in blended delivery format. So what do I mean by that? I would take one particular course and do some of it face-to-face and do some of it online. So we blended. And I thought, this is great. They're going to love it. It's unique. It offers so many great opportunities. And in my heart of hearts, I went in thinking, this is going to be the best of both worlds. However, as I soon discovered, it could also be the worst of both worlds. Because what I found was that the students started to become really disengaged. I found it to become very choppy. I see Jane nodding her head as a fellow educator, right? It's like student engagement, man. Even when they're face to face, it's like, wake up. But I'm there, and my students sometimes told me that they call me the Tasmanian devil, because I'd run around the room and I'd be looking at them, and you can't do that as much online. And especially when you're doing online asynchronously, so meaning not all at the same time. So anyway, I found everything choppy, disjointed, and so I wanted to research and understand more about how to keep students engaged in this blended delivery environment. So now I'm taking all of my findings and my understanding, meshing it together with my HR knowledge, and looking at what's going to happen and putting together research and information because there will become a time we're going to get a vaccine. We are going to be, in my mind, asking people to return to the office or on-site environment in some type of capacity. So what happens when we blend that? I'm calling this the hybrid work model, where we're going to be asking people to stay at home for some of the time, but back at work some of the time. And how do we then use that, but keep people effectively engaged and also achieving the results we want? And it sounds so simple on paper. And like all good deeds, right? They don't go unpunished. It's not going to be simple. So I'm going to share a few things with the group today that I said are probably going to be a little controversial. Or you're going to say, did she actually say that? How can an HR professional say that? Perish the thought. So I'm going to hope that you'll leave today and kind of go, wow, I want to think about that because that
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. Or how could I make it make sense?
So that is a heads up to our attendees that to keep your pen and a pencil and paper close so that when she says those, yeah, Jane showing hers, when she says those controversial things that you are later going to want to post on social media to get other people's perspective on, you know exactly how she said them. That is also my reminder that I will follow up via email with all attendees today, including links to resources that Melanie shares during our conversation, maybe some stuff she doesn't share. So keep an eye on that after following our conversation. Before we get any further, Melanie, and I think that's a great way to spend our time today, I want to launch a quick poll that I've prepared for people, and it asks two questions if people are able to see this. Number one, have you spent more time working from home in recent months than you had previously? Just to see how that shakes out. And then number two, if you have worked from home more regularly in recent months, is your employer planning to have people return to the office or the workplace anytime soon? So people are filling that out and the responses are already coming through. You mentioned already, Melanie, that you have worked with students and you were still a professor, right?
Correct. Still
So
doing that.
you, as the owner of Double M Training and Consulting, you were working with HR professionals and organizations. We have HR professionals with us today, but we have leaders sort of generally speaking. But you continue to work with students. So you haven't fully made that transition from students to professionals, HR professionals in the working world. You continue to blend those two environments and learn from both demographics, I'm assuming.
Absolutely. I like to refer to myself as a pragmatic educator in that I want to be able to take the theories and the research, which is critically important, but then understand how it's really being used in the world. I always share with people, if I had a t-shirt, it would say, so what? Here's great research, here's great information. So what? What do we do with it? How do we make it real? I know Tina Marie's posted in there, let's keep it real. Yeah, let's keep it real, right? Let's keep it pragmatic. So what? So I'm going to talk about some of these blended things and say, so what? So what do we do with this information?
One of the things I love about this topic is that it is not geographically specific. So it's something that I'm dealing with here in Chicago. I think you're in Alberta, Canada, if I remember correctly. Tina Marie is joining us from the Detroit area. I think we may have Amanda Brunson perhaps from Florida with us. So everybody's asking the same question. How has working from home worked for us, if it has? And how do we take those lessons learned into the workplace? You've already mentioned that some of what you say may be controversial. I happen to know, given the research that I've done, that you did a Disrupt HR talk a few years ago now called Cultivating Confusion, HR's Strategic Role in Promoting Uncertainty. I love that title. I don't know if it has anything to do with our conversation today, but I like this idea that you're going to bring perspective that may be controversial or at the very least is going to be thought-provoking for people. Let me pause long enough to end the poll and show you the results of that poll. 100% of the people who responded said that they've spent more time working from home in recent months. And then in terms of, does your employer have people returning to the office anytime soon? 31% said yes, 54% said no, and 15% said unsure, which is an interesting point in and of itself. But does it surprise you, Melanie, that more than half of our participants are saying that they are not going to be returning to the workplace anytime soon?
No, absolutely not. With the way the health has to be the paramount safety concern. And we have to be aware of that. And as HR professionals, we have to continue to always put that at the forefront. It also didn't surprise me that people said they're not sure. So the idea about this hybrid model that I'm sharing with you today is I'm thinking well into the future. I'm thinking even say mid next year that we might start implementing this. And gosh forbid if we have HR professionals, this is one of the ways we will continue not only to have a seat at the table, we'll have a strong voice at the table. Because having a seat at the table, that's great. But if we're just sitting there without having people hear what we have to say, who cares?
Right.
So part of our voice has to be thinking ahead to next year and thinking about scenarios. And I don't know about you, but I find it exhausting right from the start of the pandemic. Plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. It is exhausting, all those different, but this is part of our role as HR professionals. We're going to have to start talking about what could happen into next year. So we're not sure. And right now there's no plans, but I think we have to start asking the questions. I know we have to start asking the questions of our leaders. What happens when we want to start bringing people back to work, those that are able to? And look, I'm going to pause for a minute and say I fully appreciate and I'm grateful for those that have no choice right now and do have to work on site. Let's not negate that. But I'm dealing with people that right now have the privilege, yes, with all of the complexities and problems that go with it, of working from home, but that eventually will be asked in some way to be coming back on site. One of the things I'd like to share too is let's not call it return to work. Here's my first controversy, right? It's not returning to work. Returning to work sounds like it's the same old, same old. We have to really be careful of our vocabulary and our vernacular as HR people because people take that to heart, what we say. So I'm calling it very specifically returning to on-site work. It's not returning to work. It's not the same old, same old. And in fact, here's where we have the conversations with our leaders. Can we, should we be offering people as we ask them to return on site? Can we blend it? Can we let them do both? How do we achieve the best of both worlds, working from home, on site work, to get them effectively engaged and get results? Because if we're not careful, we're going to get the worst of both worlds.
I love being so specific about our language. And you might think, well, it's just semantics, right? If I say that, I mean, we're returning to work, so what's the big deal? But your point is HR professionals and other leaders who are really setting the tone, leading by example, rallying the troops, cheerleading, fill in the blank however you want, that the language that we use really is going to matter.
Absolutely. And the other, one of my favorite quotes that I read a long time ago is, the meaning of the words is not in the words themselves. The meanings of words is in us. So we have to be able to make sure that people understand what we're saying, that it makes sense to them, particularly when we're talking to our leaders and those managing our companies, that when we talk to going back to on-site work, what does that mean to them? How do they move?
I'd love to just take a moment to welcome Ramona Gupta, who chimed in saying that she's attending her first Harmony Insights lunch day today. So thank you for joining us, Ramona, and hopefully you help us spread the word about what you're doing. She's doing DEI work, diversity, equity, and inclusion work in higher ed. So we have at least a handful of people in higher ed that are joining us today, which is great to hear. And I appreciate everybody else chiming in, letting us know where you're joining us from and any questions you may have, and certainly your LinkedIn profiles as well. So Melanie, what I want to make sure we cover today in our time, certainly any resources that you want to share, again, we'll follow up with those links. I want to start by talking about a couple very specific challenges that you think people face related to blending work from home with return to on-site work, and then end with very specific tips and strategies that you want to share for the people who want to make immediate progress in this area. So if you don't mind, let's start with some of the challenges that you think people are facing, blending the two, distinguishing the two, however you want to set this up.
Thank you, Erich. So first controversial point. We as HR professionals are not going to be able to policy our way out of this or into it. We are going to have to treat people very individualistically in this scenario. And that is difficult, right? Because one of the things we do as HR professionals is we seek consistency and fairness and equity. And if we're going to offer blended or hybrid working model to our employees, we won't be able to have a carte blanche, one size fits all process. So what does this mean? This means it's going to be a lot more work for our managers because they're going to have to dig deep and talk to people and find out if and how this is going to work. So there's three main parameters that I would offer or suggest that we need to start giving our employees as a tool or resource to consider if and how they can blend a work situation. One, we need to look at the job itself going forward. And that means more than just, yeah, I know what Jack and Jill do. They go up the hill, they fetch a pail of water. It's all good. I get it. We need to be a lot deeper than that. And I'm going to say, when we talk to students about job evaluation, we say, one of the best ways is to actually go and talk to people and ask them about what they do and really engage here's a great word. This is a really happy one, a job incumbent. Isn't that an exciting word? I hate that term, job incumbent. But anyway, we need to talk to the job incumbents and involve their managers. Here's another little tiplet. Don't write to someone or call them and say, hey, I'm Joan or John from HR and I want to come and talk to you. They panic. Let them know why you want to come and talk to them and that you want to better understand their job, and make sure you involve their manager. Okay, so we really need to have a deeper understanding about what a job involves and how it could potentially be done both on site and remotely or from the home environment. Two, you need to have a better understanding of the employee's home environment itself. We need to, now that we have some time, and if we're going to be proactive and plan, let's make sure that the people do have the right technical resources, that they have the ability to focus, that there's not other distractions or things that need to be accommodated. Last but not least, and I'm oversimplifying, but we need to understand the person themselves. Are they, I'm using a weird word here, are they mature enough? And when I'm talking about maturity, I'm not talking about chronological age. I'm talking about expertise, experience, ability to self-regulate and discipline. And certain personalities thrive better in those combinations of working in both aspects. Some will do better with pure at home, some will do better with pure on site, again, when it's safe to do so. So one of the resources I'll provide, and I'll send it to you later, Erich, some links that you can share with the group, is a model called social interdependence theory. Okay, now this theory talks a lot about how to keep teams engaged, working well together, and it can be applied to a disjointed, and I'm using that word strategically, or a meshed, blended hybrid work model. So what does social interdependence theory teach us? And I know our time's limited, so I'm going to do a very high-level overview. One, when people are working in a blended model, whether they be from home part-time, on the office part-time, we need to make sure that they're still relying upon each other to achieve results. Now, I don't know about you, but one of the things I've found, even in my own teams and with my clients, is that the pandemic has forced us almost to become a little bit, not just emotionally and physically isolated, we've tended to parse out goals and tasks. So Amanda, you do this. Ivana, you do this. Michael will do this. Ira will do this. And we all have things that we have to get done. And Ellen's sitting back at home wondering, what's everybody doing? Qu'est-ce qui se passe? What's happening? And John's over there wondering what's going on, because we're doing individual things because it's easier than trying to say, okay, so let's have Jane build this widget, pass it to Tina Marie, who then gives it to Sherry, who then gives it to Jessica. That interdependency is complex, but it's needed. We need to build in that interdependence if we're actually going to get the most out of our teams. The next thing we need to be able to do is have people have the ability to give honest feedback to one another. It's a huge part of social interdependence. So if you're building these blended situations, you're going to have to be able to have people have opportunities to share and have that environment of trust, not only with their managers, but with each other. Last but not least, this is going to mean we need to have some, yes, guidelines as to what blended looks like. So for Allison, it might be, okay, 2 days you're going to come in on site, 3 days you'll work from home. Ramona, it'll be the flip. Okay, here's the next controversial thing. For this to really work though, all the research that I've done and all the theories that I've read said, we need to have everybody, tout le monde, together every now and then face to face. And that's going to be difficult, right? Until it's safe to do so. So don't start typing, oh my gosh, that crazy HR lady in Canada said. That's not, when it's safe to do so though, if we're going to have an effective hybrid work model, you need to have face-to-face interaction as the foundation, because that's the building block for the trust, the communication, and the true interdependence and willingness to have that shared goals and that shared action in achieving those results.
I hope people are taking notes. I see stuff coming through the chat, flying through the chat, and I appreciate everybody's, you're getting kudos from Tina Marie. She's the founder of the HR Unite community. She really knows HR professionals. And so to have her chiming in and underscoring what you're saying is certainly a good sign, as well as other people who just are really appreciating what you're sharing. I want to say, from my perspective as the host, you have used other languages so far, which is fantastic. And you have done a fantastic job of involving everybody else that's in our conversation today. So I can tell right off the bat that you very much practice what you preach in terms of involving people, having things be very interactive, appreciating that different voices and different names are going to bring different perspectives to the conversation. And that's the other thing that really got my attention with this interdependence. And you mentioned a buzzword for me, personality styles. Appreciating, getting to know who people are as individuals, and not making the assumption that this return to in-person work policy that we have in place, or the logistics that we've hammered out, are going to be effective and embraced and received well by everybody who are bringing back into the office. Something that I posted a while back is, you don't want to make that assumption, because there are some people coming back that are just dying to get back to the workplace and to interact face to face. And you're going to have people that say, you know what, the last few months, I have been more productive. I felt like I've been able to do my best work. I've been experienced far less anxiety than I have in my entire working career. And that's something that I'm going to miss. And it's going to be hard for me to leave that behind. So your point about treating people as individuals, getting to know them as individuals, I think is so important. And I appreciate you mentioning that. So in the time that we have left, if you can believe it, is only 5 minutes at this point. I want to be able to cover two things. First of all, I want to end with an actionable, you've already shared so many great tips and strategies, but if for the people on the call saying, you know what, I buy into all of this, I really appreciate what you're sharing with us. What is one thing I can do as an individual returning to the workplace, anticipating that return, or shepherding other people through that return, that is going to make for an effective, efficient sort of transition from working from home back to this in-person environment that I know is going to be valuable for many of us to get back to?
So thanks, Eric. Of course, I'm an academic, so you've asked me for one thing. So I'm going to go 1A, 1B, 1C.
Let's do
Hang
it.
on, 5 minutes, here we go.
Let's
Okay,
squeeze the
1A.
most out of this.
1A, start having those conversations with your leadership now. Let's go to them and say, hey, have we started considering how we're bringing people on site? Have we started considering a hybrid working model? Start now. It makes us strategic players in the business. 2, start thinking about an orientation program for a hybrid work model. And you'll say, what? Why would we do that? Think about this as a person being new. I don't care if they've been there 2 years or 27 years. If you introduce this model, it's new to them. And this highlights what Eric was saying about people's insecurities, fears, some of them being exuberant. You need to have an orientation program as one of the foundations to a hybrid work model. So start thinking about what that means and develop it. Through 1C, you can have while I'm saying you can't policy our way out of it, we can have guidelines. We can have questions. You're going to have to spend time with managers helping them have those conversations. And that's where the consistency can be. The questions to employees can be consistent. It's the answers that will be authentic, unique, and individualized. Last but not least, start thinking about and spread the word. I mean, all of you are phenomenal HR professionals that I continue to learn from and engage with. And I know how passionate you are and how much you give back to our profession. Continue to share that with people, because one of the things that's going to keep people engaged is your own engagement. And this is tough, guys. We've talked a lot about how we're tired. And I know we talk about our own compassion and care for us as HR professionals, but we have to keep our energy up somehow. And we have to keep promoting these things, and we have to be engaged and enthusiastic about the hybrid work model if it's going to work. So really, what I found through my research, and I'm really going to oversimplify, because you'll go, oh my gosh, 4.5 years of your life, and this is what you came out with? If I told you this was it, I would have to leave right now and go pour myself a drink. And it's not past 12 noon here in Calgary, so I can't do that. Ultimately, it wasn't the students that were becoming disengaged. It was the instructors. The instructors that I studied who'd done blended delivery became disengaged without enough face-to-face. And because they became disengaged, it became a domino effect, and the students became disengaged. And I had this huge aha moment. And again, it's much more complex than that. Yawn, snore, I'm not going to make you read my dissertation. But that's a key learning for all of us. We as the HR professionals, we have to stay engaged. We have to keep motivated. We have to keep energized if this blended delivery or hybrid model is going to work. And we have to help our managers stay engaged. Because if that foundation falls apart, everything else will go.
I love it. What I'm hearing is on the engagement pieces, if you are an HR professional, you're engaging your managers and your workforce, your team. If you are one of those leaders, you are engaged with your HR professionals. You know, HR professionals, as we all know, are often seen as the policy police. And I love how you said you can't policy your way into or out of it. That I feel like Steve Brown has talked about that as well. And I see you have his book positioned conveniently above your head, though. That must be a go-to for you, his new book. But I can appreciate that, because that's encouraging that dialogue and saying, we're going to work on this together. It's not HR pushing out the policy, nor is it the leaders kind of running with it on their own, not supported or empowered by the HR professional. So it has to be a true dialogue. Well, Melanie, what I want to do at this point is ask, for those of us who are going to want to connect with you outside of this conversation, follow up to learn more about your experience and how you help organizations and individuals, where can people find you online?
So I'm going to post in the chat room as well. Thank you, as I'm zooming around here. So I'm on Twitter at double M Peacock. So the word double M Peacock. I've posted my LinkedIn. People can usually find me at just they can Google on LinkedIn, Dr. Melanie Peacock. And they can find out more about my work through my consulting company. My website is the word double, DOUBLE. So double M consulting.net.
Wonderful. We're going to include, of course, links to all of those, the resources that you've mentioned. Heck, why not your dissertation? We may just throw that in to spice things up.
Hey, if someone's having trouble sleeping, I'm happy to offer it up.
We'll include that all in a follow-up email to everybody who attended here. So going forward, you know, as you register for other Harmony Insights lunch dates, if for some reason you aren't able to attend, leave yourself registered, because then you get the follow-up email from me as well. So that being said, if you enjoyed this conversation, I'm sure you did. I saw people taking crazy notes that you're going to post hopefully on social media to help spread the word about what we're doing. I would love for you to return to harmonyinsights.com/lunch dates. We have more coming up, including with Enrique Rubio, the founder of the Hacking HR community. I'm going to be speaking with Wendy Daly, who's one of the co-hosts of the HR Social Hour half-hour podcast. I've had her counterpart, John Thurmond, on already and had a great conversation with him, and plenty more to come. I'd go into it now, but I've recently signed some guests up that are just fantastic. And so I don't want to spoil any surprises. You can find out more about that at harmonyinsights.com/lunch dates. And if you would share that link on LinkedIn, that is excessively helpful, we'll say, in a good way, in terms of helping us spread the word. I know a number of you probably have to get about your afternoon. I'm going to invite those of you who want to stick around to do so, because Melanie has been gracious enough to say she'll spend some additional time with us, hearing your contributions, answering any questions that you have at this point. If you need to go about your afternoon, you can do so with our blessing. We really appreciate you being a part of this. Hopefully you're leaving with the inspiration to do your best work going forward, whether it's at home, back in the workplace, or some combination of the two. In the meantime, Dr. Melanie Peacock, it has been an absolute pleasure. You are indeed awesome sauce.
Oh, thank you. Thanks everyone for being here today.